Hello, everyone, and welcome to the YouTube channel Boring Pneumatics. So here we discuss not only pneumatics, but also topics around this. My name is Elvira, and today I'm very happy to welcome Mike Nager from the US. Hi, Mike, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here on such a fun channel.
Yeah, it is. I hope so. Let's see how it goes today. So Mike, you probably know him on the LinkedIn if you follow any smart manufacturing channels and also news. He's in top 5-6 IoT influencers and also the educator on the Industry 4.0, keynote and author. So Mike has several books. We're going to talk about them later on. But the main thing that I find really interesting, Mike, that you simplify Industry 4.0. So we hear so many words now, IoT of things, digital twins. They're really scary sometimes for people when you go actually to the industry. So I wanted to actually ask you, how did you start it? So why you work in the digitalization in Industry 4.0? What it is for you?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I've been involved in automation and control throughout my whole career. So 20 or 30 years working for manufacturers of industrial control components. And years ago, we realized that things were moving more and more towards automation, but we really didn't have a name for it. That name didn't come out until 10 or 12 years ago at the Hanover Fair, where the German industry named it Industry 4.0. And that was great because once you can name something, it crystallizes it in people's minds. So instead of just saying increasing automation and becoming more efficient, this Industry 4.0 really took off as kind of a buzzword. A lot of people talk about Industry 4.0 in very broad terms, but it was great from a marketing standpoint because people could refer to it in a very short word or two, but there was so much confusion among people that are practicing manufacturing. What is this Industry 4.0? Is it something that you buy? You can go to a big company and buy an Industry 4.0, or what is it exactly? And what I do on a day-to-day basis, I'm at the intersection of industry and education. So you can imagine if the manufacturing community is a little confused, or there's uncertainty, or there's differences in how Industry 4.0 is being perceived, by the time it gets down to the educational system, how are the professors and the high school teachers and instructors going to wrap it up into a training program? So that's where I'm kind of living, if you will, in my professional life. I talk to a lot of people, some of which might have very, very deep manufacturing knowledge in one area, say machine tooling, but maybe not in IIoT or in automation and control, or people that are looking to get started in the field and want to know which way, but they don't have any manufacturing experience. And what I found is that there's a lot written out in books and articles and podcasts, but it's filled with acronyms, jargon, fancy words that the people just getting started can't understand. So I like to equate it, if you start a new sport, tennis or golfing or sailing, there's all this terminology that if you're not in it, it's very, very confusing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you need to head with your sail in some direction, right? So this is very important.
Yeah, exactly. So I view myself sometimes as a first step of introducing the topic. I will talk to elected officials that are in charge of funding education programs throughout the country. Most of the time they have finance backgrounds or legal backgrounds. Very, very rarely will they have an industry background. They're very important. They decide where funding will go. So I have to be able to describe why manufacturing is so important, why dollars and euros should be placed into education for manufacturing versus all the other things that it could be spent on. So that's why I have to kind of hone my message. That's why I made the tagline, Smart Manufacturing Made Simple, because no one wants to feel foolish or stupid just because it's not their area of expertise, right?
Yes.
So
Yes,
that's how it kind
exactly.
of came about.
Exactly. This is great. And then I would like to ask you about the next step, because Industry 4.0, it's a really big thing. And like the topic, it feels scary for people that work in the industry, for example. For example, you mentioned a maintenance manager that works with the machine tooling, right? Things been working fine, like he produces pieces. Yes, there are maybe some downtime of the machine, maybe there are some problems in the system. He fixes it. How you motivate this guy to integrate any digitalization, any monitoring, any like what comprise the Industry 4.0 for this guy? How would you motivate him?
Yeah, so for the existing workers, it's quite the challenge because these technologies are being incorporated. In the case of a maintenance manager at an end user, as you say, maybe they went along for 10 or 15. They know how to listen with their ears and feel with their fingers any vibrations, and then know if something is wrong because they have 20 years of experience. But what's happening now? Well, that plant, that manufacturing facility, if it's food or automotive, it doesn't matter, is constantly usually buying new equipment. And all the OEM equipment manufacturers are very interested in providing equipment that is up to date for marketing and for sales reasons. So they're taking something that maybe was very simple and mechanical, and they're adding an IIoT, industrial Internet of Things component to it, maybe so it can attach to the internet so that it can be viewed from anywhere in the world. So the individual maintenance person might not have any say in that. The new equipment comes in, it has all this capability. Maybe it even has a cybersecurity system on the front end, because now it's all Ethernet based. And they're like, oh my gosh, what is this? The firewall is not something that I can feel vibrations with or hear if it's working or not. So companies, have an obligation, I think, to continuously train employees, not leave them by the side. That would be a disaster for the industry if people are just like, oh, we're going to fire all these people that don't have the experience and we'll hire all new folks, because those people that have the experience have very valuable experience still. At the end of the day, something has to rotate and move typically. And if it's not, then money's not being made. So it's real important for companies to upskill and to train. They can do that internally. They can do that with schools in the area. They can do that online, but they have to do it somehow. We know that.
Yes. And how usually training processes go, and like what feedback you get from people, especially when you train the maintenance managers that already have experience of 20, 25 years? What is usual feedback for you?
Yeah, so as you might imagine, people are different in their temperaments and their personalities. So there's some people that will do it because they're forced to. They have to. They've got 5 more years of working before retirement, and they'll do what is told of them to do it. But I would say most people, at least the people that I've come in contact with, get kind of excited about it. It's a new opportunity to learn something new and fresh. And it's when you first get into something, there's so much to learn that it's very exciting. So it's a mixture, I would say. Overall, people are generally excited about the capabilities, especially if that camera and that remote system means that they could check in on a red flashing light at 2 o'clock in the morning from their home and not have to go into the factory to check on it.
Exactly.
That's a quality of life.
Yeah. So what are the benefits of integrating those monitoring system like this from your perspective?
Yeah. So in general, I would say it displaces the need to be in physical proximity to the equipment. And that's a huge benefit. It's also a huge risk, right? Because now you've opened up your equipment to a potential way of hackers or cyber criminals coming in. But I think the advantages are too great that we're not going to put that back in the box and say that we're not going to do it. There's a lot of talk in the machine building and OEM community, often the companies that are making these very sophisticated machines. I know that you're in northern Italy. You know that machine making in that region of the world is top notch. And you know what they are offering is the people that are working for these machine builders are generally the experts in the world of how that machine and how that process runs, more so and sometimes than the end user. So, but you know, you just can't fly people from northern Italy all over the world all the time for every single question or project that comes up. So there's a lot of excitement now about virtual reality, putting on the goggles, having that number one expert in the world, that man or that woman in Milan, being able to interface with someone in the US or Singapore or Australia in real time, but not physically located there. So I think it's a great opportunity. It's not just in manufacturing, by the way. You know, I was talking to my daughter who's in the medical industry now. She's just finishing up, and they're doing all robotics and remote procedures in the medical industry as well. So it's
I think
industry,
remote diagnostics, it's really an amazing thing that can drive forward first of all the collaboration, and that the reducing the downtime of machine and making life easier. So then I think when people actually see that it makes life easier rather than the complicated, yes, you need to go through some learning moments, adapting to, let's say, to a new reality, but then your life will be easier. So it's as well as like with sport, for example, you start doing some sport, like you really sweat, you cry, but then you feel good after this, and then it becomes a habit. So yeah. I think it's in general it's a habit, and here I think it's very important the fact that you simplify it. So I think your strength in the teaching people, it's that you simplify the manufacturing and you simplify for them their understanding. And the best part that I find really fascinating, let's go now from the people that already work at the factory to people that studying this. So I think maybe a couple of students from Italy will watch this interview. And I wanted you to talk about the education for students. So what is the role of this IoT of things? Because now, you know, in the heads of students, I see it's like you either go to study heavy manufacturing that is not very attractive, or you go to study robotics that's like something like in between, or you go and you are a developer, software developer. And these worlds, they don't seem to be aligned in the mind of student yet, because it's just three different directions usually in the educational system. So how do you see this?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, you know, I'm coming from my own perspective. So I've always, you know, I was born, lived, and work in the United States. So I have a specific mind view of how I've seen things over the course of my career. That may have some similarities in other parts of the world, but every country is kind of unique in some way. So what did we experience over the last 30 years? We experienced a period of what's called globalization of business, and factories in the United States shut down and got moved to other sections of the world. So, and that happened for 30 years. It really accelerated in 1990, right? And, you know, we have a term for it here in the U.S. in the Midwest, and I hope you're going to edit this a little bit.
Yeah, no worries.
Because I can't think of it. The Rust Belt, that's what it's called. Okay, so it's all the factories that were shut down, and so that leaves a very negative image in the minds of many people about manufacturing. They would not encourage their young sons and daughters to go into the field because they saw it as a shrinking field and not one with opportunity. Quite the opposite. They saw people losing their jobs for many, many years as that production shifted overseas to low cost countries. The US is never, you know, cannot compete on a per hour basis with other parts of the world for sure. So, but now what we're seeing, because of all, you know, everything that we hear every day in the news, you know, we don't have to go into that, but you know, we're seeing.
Sorry, Mike, no, you're back. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, the Skype phone started ringing.
Oh, no, it's okay.
We're seeing production coming back to the US and more of a regional philosophy in manufacturing. But that same negative emotion is still there. So people are not encouraging young people to go into manufacturing. I don't think it even gets brought up as an option in many cases. It's not even on the radar screen. Oh, what are you going to be when you grow up? A doctor, a lawyer, a computer scientist, a nurse?
A blogger now?
Yeah, right. A TikToker?
A TikToker. Okay.
So I wrote 2 books. One, the latest one is a rhyming picture book for very young people, maybe 7 or 8 years old, that they could read with their parents, and it rhymes and goes through like a little story about how important manufacturing is, and has some pictures of robots that kids kind of like to look at. And the one before that was written for a little bit older students, maybe at the high school level, that are now, maybe they hear something about manufacturing, maybe the idea of making things is interesting to them, maybe they went to a camp during the summer, a maker space, and they want to make this a career. And in that, I detail all these different aspects of manufacturing that no one thinks about. It's not sitting in front of a machine and pushing a button anymore all day long. There's computer science people, there's electrical engineers, there's mechanical engineers, there's mechatronics, software stack developers. It goes on and on. So I tried to show that some job titles and opportunities, how to get into the field through education or through on-the-job experiences. So that's what those 2 books were published about.
I think it's really fascinating that it's not even just some subject book for students that already studying this, but let's say just like the preparation to show what is possible. Because when kids are 7, 8 years old, most of the books are about the fairy tales that about the world that doesn't exist. And I also always been asking myself, like, why, why we are all prepared on the Wizard of Oz, and like, there is always nice wisdom behind it, but there is so few things about the reality, and you don't understand what exists unless just you talk with your parents, and their opinion always based on the economical situation and on in general, like what's going on around right now, but no one knows what's going to be in the 20 or 30 years from now. And about this children's book, I saw in internet and LinkedIn that it was very well received, that many parents actually bought this book and talked and read together with kids. Do you have some nice, interesting feedbacks from children there, or like have a parents?
Yeah, it was really great. A few people on LinkedIn took it and they kind of promoted it. A couple influential people. So then a lot of people took a look at it, and they sent me photos of them reading it with their kids, and which part of the book they really like. So on a couple of the pages, I have industrial robots hanging from the ceiling to perform an operation, and kind of name them cute names, right? And so they all get a name, and that seemed to be the most favorite part of the books.
Okay, no, that's great. And I think mostly maybe on the personal level now, the question, what motivated you to educate children and teenagers about manufacturing? So what inspired you?
Yeah, so it's very adjacent to what my day job is. So as you know, I work for the company Festo, and my day job is talking to instructors and professors and people that are running the educational system, that have an idea that they want to increase the capability of their manufacturing program. And through LinkedIn and other ways, they'll come to me, and then we start the idea exchange. And when COVID hit, my travel schedule got zipped to zero. And normally this would be done face to face. So I became more active online, and I also had a lot more free time because I wasn't traveling back and forth at airports all the time. So I was like, oh, what can I do that's kind of adjacent to what I'm doing on the day job, but not exactly the same thing? So that's how the idea came up.
That's really great. Thank you so much. I think maybe like the last question, what are the challenges you see now and the opportunities for the education right now in general for education in the manufacturing, not necessarily about the industry 4.0, but what are the trends or what are the difficulties or what you wished for that made your life easier and your job easier
Yeah.
and maybe more efficient?
Well, the challenges in education, and if we focus a little bit on the higher education, let's say bachelor, master degree level, is that the demands of industry and the demands of industry 4.0 are not neatly contained within the traditional silos of instruction. So for 100 years, we could have a mechanical engineering department. We could have an electrical engineering department. We could have on and on, with no interaction between those technical disciplines. Zero, right? In fact, in a lot of places, they're competitors to each other within the school, for students, for resources, for classrooms, for instructors. So a big challenge and a big opportunity is working with universities that are now starting to break down those barriers, to share resources, share senior projects, capstone projects amongst all the different people that have to make it happen in the real world, right? So in a company, it's going to be a mixture of not only engineers of all different types, but finance and marketing and sales, all having to come together to create this thing that allows the company to survive. So that's the interesting part, seeing how people are now shifting and cooperating more within the education system.
That's great. So I think this intercorrelation and the collaboration, this is actually the key. And the most important part, I think, is to educate people and just to show that there is this opportunity, right? Rather than be in competition. So thank you so much.
Yep. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I really liked our conversation today. So we will put the link for your books and also your profile to the LinkedIn. And yes, we'll keep in touch, and I will keep track on the education. So maybe your next book will be for kids of 2 or 3 years old, or I don't know. So
we'll have to see. I'm taking a break for right now, but you never know.
Okay, great. But I will be really happy to talk in the future about your new projects.
Yeah,
Thank you so
for
much.
the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.